Today we're going to be talking about credential management and for government and enterprise, and that's going to just touch on lightly how the future of access controls and what that means. For a little bit of context, this is a pretty high-level webinar. We're not going to be diving deep into the weeds, so if you know a lot of this, it might be redundant. But we're going to talk a little bit about the concept of trust and identity, then credentialing, get into a couple of case studies, and then talk a little bit more about who and what Symbichain and consensus are. So I'm going to begin with jumping right in and asking a rhetorical question of who do we trust? This is a pretty famous webcomic at this point that's been around since the 90s. And in general, we need trust in order to be able to perform even the most simple transactions between ourselves, whether that's sending money from point A to point B, purchasing a good or a service. And all of this trust is going to be based on some form of reputation. Traditionally, before the age of the internet, we were able to rely on family, friends, our village or town center, our neighborhood, because we had relationships with these people, and we were able to build that trust over time and over a series of interactions. As we got to know an individual or an organization, as we interacted with them, made purchases, and worked together, we were able to build layers of trust over time. The problem is, in the age of the internet, is that trust peer-to-peer doesn't really scale. There's a concept known as the Dunbar number that says humans can hold about 150 stable relationships before we have to start using other tools to augment that and expand that number beyond. And originally, the internet wasn't built with this concept of identity. We had the original IP addresses to make sure that we were sending communications machine to machine in the right way. And then we eventually augmented that with the concept of email addresses. But we had no guarantee about who was controlling those email addresses. And as the internet continued to evolve and get adopted, we started accepting intermediaries like Uber, eBay, Airbnb to act as the middleman to add additional layers of convenience as well as security. One of the biggest ones is dispute resolution. We use credit cards because we want to be able to get a refund if a good isn't sent. We want reputations to be managed to make sure that if someone doesn't sell us or send the good that they said they would, we can mark that down, and it just provides an extra layer of protection. And this is expanded into the brands that we trust, what banks we use, what cars we drive, our trust in lawyers and the court system, as well as extending that into governments and other institutions as well. And sometimes the trust works, but not everywhere and not all the time. In the US, for example, we've had a breach with Equifax losing 140 million data records, the credit card breach of Target, and even as recently as 2016 with the presidential election, with the concept of deep fakes, as well as the ability to influence perception at scale, thanks to platforms like Google and Facebook. And even though we've moved up, we've added new features like we have single sign-on through Facebook or Google. And while that's great, the problem is it still breaks down. There's always going to be a misunderstanding, the concept of information asymmetry, especially when there's an imbalance of power where these platforms have huge stores of our data. And until recently, we really haven't had a way to collaborate at scale on Earth better than this. So we've been working with the tools that we've had available to us. So trust at this point has been based on reputation, and it's required for everything. So what is the state of digital identity? So currently, ID and credentials, this concept of credentials, which I'll touch on a bit more, are built and issued by existing agencies and services who control this data. Thus, all of our data is living in all these various silos. As I'm sure you all know, we have tons of usernames and passwords spread across all these different products and services. And that creates a couple problems. One, we have an incomplete picture of ourselves. I oftentimes forget what accounts I have spread all over the internet. So it makes our own self-identity of data less valuable. So needless to say, these credentialing types are endless, but the biggest problem is that they lack interoperability.
So I'd just like now to introduce the Symbichain product and then talk about some case studies where we've used access control. So Symbichain provides a solution which enables developers with any type of development background really to take advantage of blockchain and introduce the benefits of blockchain into their organization. Rationale behind this Symbichain solution is that blockchain development actually has quite a steep learning curve. There's a lot of complicated technologies to put into place and quite a lot of new concepts for developers to grasp.